The crystal glass in my daughter-in-law's hand trembled slightly, just enough for a single drop of crimson wine to escape and stain the pristine white tablecloth. Her smile was a perfect predatory curve. "And I want to give a special thank you to my mother-in-law," Tiffany announced, her voice dripping with mock sweetness that echoed through the grand ballroom. Without her, my darling Mark would have never learned what it's like to have nothing. So thank you for showing him the value of ambition." A few of her wealthy friends snickered. My son Mark just stared at his plate, his face pale. Then Tiffany took a step toward me, stumbled dramatically, and the entire glass of red wine cascaded down the front of my simple, beige dress. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Oh my goodness!" she shrieked, her hand flying to her mouth. "I am so clumsy, but don't worry, it's not like that dress was worth anything anyway." She thought this was her ultimate victory, the final public humiliation of the poor, useless mother-in-law. What she didn't know was that her little performance was about to cost her everything. You might be wondering why my own son would stand by and let his wife treat me like dirt. To understand that, you have to understand the lie our family was built on and the secret I had kept for over 20 years. It all started when Mark met Tiffany. My son had always been my world. After his father passed away, it was just the two of us. I was a public school music teacher, and we didn't have much, but we had love. I poured every spare penny, every ounce of my energy into his education. I took on extra tutoring jobs in the evenings and on weekends, sold my own mother's jewelry, and even secretly took out a second mortgage on our small house to pay for his college degree. I wanted him to have the life I never could. He promised me he would never forget it, that he would always take care of me. Then, during his senior year, he met Tiffany. Her family had old money, the kind that whispers through generations. Suddenly, my small house was embarrassing. My home-cooked meals were peasant food. My second-hand clothes were a disgrace. Tiffany remade him, molding him into a man who was ashamed of his own mother. He started visiting less, and when he did, he would criticize everything: the chipped paint on the walls, the worn-out furniture. "Tiffany says a man's success is reflected in his parents' lifestyle," he told me once. "We need to work on your image, Mom." I was no longer a person, I was a project, an obstacle to his new, shiny life. When they announced their engagement, I wasn't even told in person. I saw it on social media, a picture of them on a yacht, a diamond the size of a quail's egg on Tiffany's finger. Mark called me a week later. "Sorry, Mom, it's been a whirlwind," he'd said, his voice distant. "Tiffany's parents are handling everything. It's going to be a very exclusive event." The message was clear. My presence was a complication, not a celebration. I wasn't invited to the dress fittings, the cake tastings, or any of the lavish parties. When I asked Tiffany what I should wear, she'd looked me up and down with a condescending smirk. "Oh, just wear whatever you have," she'd chirped. "Something simple. We want you to be comfortable. We'll seat you in the back so you won't feel overwhelmed." The beige dress I wore was the last gift my late husband ever gave me. I had saved it for a special occasion, and I thought my only son's wedding qualified. It was modest and dated, I knew, but it was precious to me. Seeing it soaked in cheap red wine, I felt a flicker of the old pain, the familiar sting of being worthless in their eyes. But then I pushed it down. That pain belonged to a different woman, a woman who no longer existed. The woman standing there now was just an actress, playing a part. What hurt more than the insults was the money. About a year ago, Mark came to me, looking haggard. He said he had a cash flow problem with a new business venture. Tiffany's family, he explained, only invested in sure things. And he needed to prove himself first. He needed $50,000, just as a bridge loan. He swore on his father's memory that he'd pay me back double. I knew I shouldn't. It was nearly all of my retirement savings. But he was my son. I looked into his eyes and saw the boy I used to read bedtime stories to. So I liquidated my funds and gave him everything. A month later, I saw Tiffany post a picture of their new luxury sports car. The caption read, "Hubby working hard and playing harder, success." I never saw a dime of that money again. So as I stood there in the center of that opulent ballroom, dripping wine onto the polished marble floor, I wasn't a victim. I was a creditor. Tiffany's cruel laughter echoed in my ears, but I barely heard it. I was looking past her, past my spineless son, and toward the stage. The wedding singer, a handsome young man with a guitar, had just finished a song. He was setting his instrument down when his eyes scanned the room. They passed over the crowd, then stopped. They widened, first in confusion, and then in utter disbelief. He froze, his hand hovering over his guitar. The whole room, which had been tittering at my expense, slowly fell silent, turning to see what had captured the entertainer's attention. He took a hesitant step toward his microphone, never breaking his gaze from me. The silence in the ballroom stretched, becoming heavy and uncomfortable. Everyone was staring at the singer, who in turn was staring only at me. He cleared his throat, and his voice, now stripped of its melodic performance quality, boomed through the speakers, raw and full of emotion. "Mrs. Evans," he asked, his voice cracking slightly, Is that really you?" He called me by my late husband's name, a name my son and his new wife had practically erased. A confused murmur rippled through the guests. Tiffany shot a venomous glare first at the singer, then at me, furious that her moment of triumph was being interrupted. "Excuse me," she snapped, her voice high and sharp. "We're paying you to sing, not to talk to the charity guests." The singer didn't even glance at her. It was as if she didn't exist. He carefully placed his expensive-looking acoustic guitar on its stand and began to walk to the edge of the stage. "I don't think you understand," he said, his voice low and dangerous, now addressing the entire room. "This woman, this teacher, she is the only reason I am standing on this stage tonight. She's the reason I'm standing on any stage at all." His name was Leo Vance, and while Tiffany and her family had likely paid a 5-figure sum to have him perform, thinking he was just a trendy, popular musician, I knew him as the terrified 14-year-old boy who used to show up to my after-school music club with holes in his shoes and bruises on his arms. He had a gift, a voice that could silence a room, and a talent for songwriting that was beyond his years. But he came from a broken home, with a father who told him his dreams were worthless. He was ready to give up. I didn't let him. I gave him free piano lessons for 4 years. I found an old guitar at a pawn shop and fixed it up for him. When he won his first talent competition, I was the only one in the audience cheering for him. I used my own meager savings to help him record his first demo tape, the very tape that got him his first record deal. Now, Leo Vance, the Grammy-nominated artist whose concerts sold out in minutes, was stepping off the stage. He ignored the bride and groom, bypassed the table with Tiffany's aghast parents, and walked directly toward me, his eyes shining with unshed tears. The entire ballroom watched in stunned silence as this famous musician stopped right in front of the humiliated mother-in-law in the wine-stained dress. He bowed his head slightly, a gesture of profound respect. "Teacher," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I've been looking for you for years." My son Mark's face was a mask of confusion. He looked from me to the famous musician standing before me as if he couldn't compute the reality of the scene. Tiffany, however, recovered from her shock with a burst of indignant rage. "What is the meaning of this?" she hissed, marching toward us. "Get away from her! You're ruining my wedding!" Leo didn't even turn his head. He slowly shrugged off his tailored velvet jacket, a piece that undoubtedly cost more than my entire wardrobe, and gently draped it over my shoulders, covering the dark red stain on my dress. The jacket was warm and smelled faintly of sandalwood. It felt like a shield. Only then did he turn to face Tiffany. His eyes, which had been so full of warmth for me, were now chips of ice. "Your wedding," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, but still amplified by the microphone clipped to his shirt. You mean the wedding you're holding in a venue owned by a man whose entire music education program is funded by a private grant, a grant I established 5 years ago? He paused, letting the information sink into the silent room. I called my friend, Mr. Harrison, the owner, this morning. I told him the mother of the groom was a very special guest. I told him she was the most important person who would be in this room tonight. I asked him to extend every courtesy. I guess that message didn't get through to you. He then looked directly at Mark, and for the first time I saw my son physically recoil, as if struck. And you, Leo said, his voice filled with a deep, profound disappointment. Your mother sold her jewelry to pay for your tuition. She worked herself to the bone so you could have a better life. Did you forget that? Or was it just inconvenient to remember when you cashed the checks? He knew because, in my lonely years, I had confided in him during our occasional phone calls, foolishly thinking my son's neglect was just a phase. Leo then turned back to the stunned bride. As for my performance fee, he continued, his voice ringing with finality, don't worry about it. My contract has a morality clause, and frankly, there is nothing moral about what I've witnessed here tonight. Consider my services a gift, not to you, but to her. He gestured to me. A small, pathetic down payment on a debt I can never truly repay. He then looked at me, his expression softening once more. Mrs. Evans, he said gently, I think we've seen enough. Would you allow me to escort you out of here? Before I could answer, a man in a sharp suit, the hotel manager, began striding purposefully toward Tiffany's father, holding a very official-looking clipboard. The party was just getting started. I simply nodded. The anger and humiliation that had been my constant companions for years had vanished, replaced by a profound, quiet calm. I let Leo place a steadying hand on my back and, holding my head high, I turned away from my son and his bride. We began to walk toward the grand ballroom doors, and the sea of guests parted for us as if I were royalty. The whispers were no longer muffled snickers at my expense, they were hushed, frantic questions. That's Leo Vance. Did you hear what he said? Who is that old woman? I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, but for the first time they were filled with awe and curiosity, not pity. As we passed Tiffany's parents' table, the hotel manager, a stern man in a tuxedo, intercepted her father. Mr. Albright, the manager said, his voice flat and devoid of warmth. There seems to be an adjustment to your bill. He slid the clipboard onto the table. Tiffany's father, a man used to bullying his way through life, scoffed. Whatever it is, just add it on. We're not pinching pennies here. I'm glad to hear that, the manager replied smoothly. Because the 80% discount on the venue, the catering for 300 guests, and the floral arrangements, a courtesy extended to Mr. Vance as a personal favour, has been rescinded due to a violation of our establishment's code of conduct regarding the treatment of a protected guest. He tapped a line on the invoice with a pen. The new total is $287,000 due immediately. We do not extend credit on revoked courtesy accounts. Mr. Albright's face went from ruddy to a ghastly, mottled white. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. Tiffany's mother let out a small, strangled squeak. From across the room, I saw Mark finally break free from his paralysis. "Mom!" he cried, his voice desperate. "Mum, wait!" He started to run toward me, his face a mess of panic and regret. But Leo simply shifted his body slightly, blocking Mark's path without a word. My son skidded to a halt, looking helpless and small. The chasm between us was no longer just emotional, it was a physical space he could not cross. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had already given him 25 years of my life, my love, and my money. I had nothing left for him. Leo gently pushed open the heavy oak doors, and we stepped out into the cool, quiet hallway, leaving the wreckage of their perfect, expensive evening behind us. The sound of Tiffany starting to shriek at her father was the last thing I heard before the doors clicked shut. The hallway was blissfully silent. Leo guided me to a small private lounge nearby, the kind reserved for VIP guests. He had a staff member bring me a glass of water and a warm towel. For a few moments, we just sat in the plush armchairs, the adrenaline of the confrontation slowly ebbing away. He looked at me, his brow furrowed with concern. "Are you all right, Mrs. Evans? Truly?" I took a slow sip of water and met his gaze. "I am now, Leo, thank you." I folded the warm towel in my lap. "I have to confess," I said, my voice steady, "this wasn't entirely a surprise. I knew you were going to be the performer tonight." Leo looked stunned. "You did? How?" "Mark was bragging," I explained. "He called me a few weeks ago, not to talk, but to make sure I understood just how important and expensive this wedding was. He said, we even got Leo Vance to perform. He said your name like I was supposed to be impressed with the brand, not the man. He had no memory of who you were to me or who I was to you. To him, you were just another status symbol his new family had purchased." A sad, ironic smile touched my lips. I decided then that I had to come. I knew if you saw me, you wouldn't let them treat me that way. I didn't know what you would do, but I knew you would do something. His expression hardened. "They deserve worse, especially Mark. What he did—" He trailed off, shaking his head in disgust. That was my opening, the final piece of the story that even Leo didn't know. "What he did was worse than you imagine, Leo," I said quietly. "The $50,000 I gave him, that wasn't just my retirement fund. It was the money I needed to pay off the second mortgage on my house, the same mortgage I took out to pay for his college degree in the first place." I took a deep breath, the shame of it still a raw wound. "The bank sent me a final notice last week. I'm going to be evicted at the end of the month. I'm going to lose my home, the home he grew up in." Leo stared at me, his face paling. The look of concern was replaced by a cold, hard fury. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Get my legal team on the line, all of them, now." He looked up at me, his eyes blazing with a protective fire I hadn't seen since he was a boy, defending a younger student from a bully in the schoolyard. "Mrs. Evans," he said, his voice a low, determined vow, "you are not losing your home. We are not just getting your money back. We are going to take back everything they owe you, with interest." Leo paced the room as he spoke into his phone, his voice a low, commanding hum. "David, I need the corporate litigation team. I'm sending you the details now." He listened for a moment, his eyes fixed on the ornate pattern of the Persian rug. "No, this is pro bono, but it's my highest priority. I want a lien placed on a 2024 Porsche 911, license plate pending. I want an injunction filed against the sale of a property in Northwood, and I want a lawsuit for the recovery of funds obtained under fraudulent misrepresentation, plus damages for emotional distress. I want it filed by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Spare no expense." He hung up and looked at me. "My head of legal, David Chen. He's a shark and he hates bullies." He sat down opposite me. "Mrs. Evans, he's going to need any proof you have. Texts, emails, bank statements, anything." I closed my eyes for a moment, and the memory, once a source of shame, now felt like a weapon. "He was careful not to put much in writing," I said. "He came to my house. He cried. He told me it was a short-term investment in a tech startup that was guaranteed to pay out. A bridge loan, he called it. He said Tiffany's father wouldn't help him until he proved he could raise capital on his own." I opened my eyes. "The money was a wire transfer. The bank records will show it left my account and went directly to his." Leo nodded. "The car purchase a month later will establish the fraud." "There's more," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I reached into my old handbag, the one Tiffany always said was shabby, and pulled out my phone. I scrolled through my saved voicemails until I found it. It was from 2 months after I gave him the money, the last time I had asked about it. I pressed play, and my son's voice, annoyed, condescending, and utterly dismissive, filled the silent, luxurious room. "Mom, look, you have to stop calling me about this. It's embarrassing. Tiffany says that when you give a gift, you don't expect anything in return. The venture didn't work out, okay? The money's gone. You need to let it go. It was your choice to give it to me. Stop making this so awkward." I stopped the recording. Leo was silent, his jaw tight with a rage so palpable it felt like a physical force in the room. He didn't say a word. He simply took out his phone again and forwarded the audio file to his lawyer with a single-line message. "Add this to the filing. Title it Exhibit A." He then called the hotel's front desk. "This is Leo Vance in the chairman's lounge. Please prepare the presidential suite for my guest, Mrs. Sarah Evans. She will be staying indefinitely. Put all charges on my personal account." He looked at me. "Your fight is over, Mrs. Evans. Now you rest. We'll handle the rest." The presidential suite was larger than the entire first floor of my house. It had panoramic views of the city, a grand piano in the corner, and a bathroom lined with Italian marble. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without the familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. I wasn't worried about the foreclosure notice on the door or the growing pile of bills on my kitchen table. I woke up the next morning, drank a cup of coffee delivered by room service, and felt the quiet, steady return of my own strength. Later that morning, Leo came by with a tablet. "You should see this," he said, a grim smile on his face. He showed me a popular city gossip blog. The headline read, "Society Wedding of the Year Ends in Disaster as Groom's Secretly Famous Mother-in-Law is Rescued by Grammy Star Leo Vance." The article, citing anonymous guests, detailed every humiliating moment: Tiffany's cruel speech, the wine spill, and the shocking revelation about the venue's bill. The comments section was a brutal avalanche of condemnation aimed at Tiffany and Mark. Her carefully crafted image of perfect elegance had been shattered in a single night. As I was reading, my phone buzzed. It was Mark. My hand trembled for a second, a reflex born of years of hoping for his call. Then I steeled myself and answered, putting the phone on speaker. "What do you want, Mark?" I asked, my voice flat. "Mum, oh thank God, I've been so worried. Where are you? Tiffany is a wreck. Her father is furious. You don't understand the mess you've made." His voice was a high-pitched whine of panic and accusation. There was no apology, no remorse, only blame. "The mess I've made," I replied, my voice as cold as ice. "Mark, a piece of advice. You should find a very good lawyer and don't ever call me Mom again." I hung up before he could respond. 2 hours later, Leo's lawyer, David Chen, called me. "Good morning, Mrs. Evans," he said, his voice crisp and professional. "I just wanted to inform you that your son, Mark, was served with the lawsuit 10 minutes ago. The process server delivered the documents to him in the middle of a board meeting at his firm." I could almost hear the satisfaction in his voice. "We have also successfully placed the lien on the Porsche. He can't sell it or transfer ownership. It is now a pending asset in a fraud case." David paused. "Oh, and one more thing. I just received an emotional call from a Mr. Albright, your son's father-in-law. He made several unfortunate threats. Don't worry, the entire call was recorded. We can add witness intimidation to our list of grievances." The fight I had expected to last for months was over in less than a week. Faced with a mountain of irrefutable evidence, a public relations nightmare, and now a potential criminal charge for witness intimidation, the Albright family's arrogance shattered. They were bullies, not fighters. Their wealth was a tool for intimidation, useless against an opponent who couldn't be bought or scared. David Chen called me on a Friday morning. "They want to settle," he said. "They're terrified of this going to court." "What are our terms?" I asked, the words feeling foreign and powerful on my tongue. "Our terms are not a negotiation," David stated firmly. "They are a list of demands. First, they will wire $350,000 to an account of your choosing. That covers the initial $50,000 punitive damages, emotional distress, and all legal fees. Second, your son Mark and his wife Tiffany will co-author a formal public apology, which will be submitted to the same blog that covered the wedding story. Third, the Porsche 911 will be signed over, free and clear, to the Leo Vance Foundation for Young Musicians. These terms are final. They agreed to everything that same afternoon. The money appeared in a new bank account by evening. The title for the sports car was messengered to Leo's office, and the next day the apology was published online for the entire city to see. It was a pathetic, grovelling piece of writing that reeked of lawyers and desperation. The fallout for them was swift and total. I heard through Leo that Tiffany's father, enraged by the financial loss and the public humiliation, cut them both off completely. Their marriage, a flimsy structure built on money and status, collapsed within 6 months. Mark lost his job when the scandal became too much for his firm's reputation. He lost his wife, his car, his career, and the financial backing of his wealthy in-laws. In trying to erase his past to secure his future, he ended up with nothing. I never spoke to him again. I used the settlement money to pay off the mortgages on my house. I renovated my small kitchen and planted a garden in the backyard. With the rest, I started a small, free music program at the local community centre for children whose parents couldn't afford lessons. Leo's foundation provided all the instruments. My life is quiet now, but it is my own. It is filled with the sounds of children learning to play, of laughter and of music. I am no longer just a mother, a widow, or a victim. I am a teacher again, and that is a title no one can ever take from me.